consciousness, it wasn't real quick.
One matrix is everywhere. It is all around us.
The aliens were like, coming. Our DNA was split, dude, from
bro.
the fucking Anunnaki, man.
By the process of elimination, you might determine that we are probably being visited.
Well, you know, maybe some of them did really have some kind of experience or saw something. And
The aliens are like telepathic. I don't even believe this.
From saying extraterrestrials are related to UFOs.
You could potentially come to the same conclusion. It is an that has been pulled over your eyes to blind you from the truth.
What's up, gentlemen? How you doing today?
Good.
What's up, guys?
Doing well. We got a fun one today. So not to dox you too much, Stezo, but you're in the general area of Mount Shasta.
Yep.
I know you've got some good lore to tell us about that. So we aren't going to dive into what's up, Pilgrim. We're not going to dive in too much to like his specific story this round because like I feel like a lot of like at least much of what I was like looking into. There are like 10 topics that we could like really deep dive into surrounding Shasta. I even saw some stuff about people saying there's like old like military bases underneath Shasta. I don't know how much you're familiar with that.
There was a little bit of that. Like I said, that was one of the rumors I heard growing up, but that kind of phased out.
Yeah.
I think a lot of that got spun into. There was a lot of military maneuvers because of the possible alien activity. So it kind of that's where it came from. It wasn't like no military base, but you know, rumors start flying, they change.
I was gonna say the same. A lot of what so specifically, I'll just throw out a handful of a few things we're going to talk about tonight. Lemuria, however you want to pronounce that. Sky People was an interesting one. Bigfoot, a lot of Bigfoot stuff that's surrounding Shasta. And you know, there's one specific abduction story or like kind of like missing person story that I want to talk about. The robot grandma. I don't know if you like.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, that one's insane. I have a little article, or not article, but like off-brand Reddit thing that I found.
Yeah.
But no, it's an interesting story nonetheless. I think we're gonna have a good conversation. You want to Skype? Yes, Pilgrim.
Sky People.
You want to kick this one off for us, Stezo? Where do you want to start with this?
Yeah. So, like I said, I grew up in the area and very familiar with Northern California. And like you just start hearing, since you're little, you start hearing like all the stories about Mount Shasta, you know, and it really came a lot from like the Native American tribes that live in this area. Just kind of think that that's always been like the center of the universe. Like this, that's like they worship that mountain, like, and they really think that everything that happens was based on making sure that that's, you know, you just don't mess with the mountain, and that it's like the center of the universe essentially.
Yeah.
So I started hearing that, and then you'd hear stories about like other things, you know, like UFOs, Bigfoot, you know, like the main Bigfoot, the Patterson Gimli film or whatever is like literally a stone's throw from Mount Shasta, probably 40 miles as the crow flies. But, you know, there's no straight way to get there. It's all through mountains. But everywhere up there, there's been sightings of that. And there's just been a lot of different stuff. You know, it's also became like and I don't know when this started, but a place for like, you know, kind of like new age hippies to go and just kind of a place where you got a lot of, there's up in the area in the mountains, there's a lot of those, I guess they call them communes or whatever.
Yeah.
They'll live in the woods and stuff and just grow weed and get high, man. And
I was gonna say, California isn't too far from there.
Exactly. And they live off the grid and stuff. And I've gone through those towns, you know, those little villages essentially before, you know, hunting and everything. And people just stare at you and they think, you know, that you might be law enforcement. Once they realize you're good, you're good. But I don't know if you want me to tell you the story that I had heard like years ago. Okay, yeah. So we're talking probably early 90s. And I'd already heard some of the, you know, folklore, and you always kind of, when you're a young kid, you're kind of like, oh yeah, whatever. But I kind of always had a fascination for paranormal and like UFOs and stuff like that. So me and a couple buddies were in the set that there's a city right next to the base of the mountain called Mount Shasta City. So when I say Mount Shasta, there's a little town there, and it's actually a really cool town. If you've ever been through there, it's kind of like your atypical, like if you've ever been to like Tahoe or like Colorado, there's like ski resort sounds. It's a lot like that, very laid back, small community and everything. Kind of, there's like a timber mills there and all that stuff.
I've always considered it like, because I've gone like Boy Scouts, like camping trips up in that area, and we always stop in that in that little town. I've always considered it kind of mountain town ish.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, and so you get that vibe, right? So they're usually the people that live there are kind of they're a little bit cautious with like out of towners and stuff. But if you're local, everyone's all buddy. And so, anyways, we're kind of going up there and we're just messing around. We're going to like crystal shops and all these different things and checking out all these different volcanic rocks and everything. We go into this one store and I don't remember the name of it, but they have all kinds of stores. It's kind of like you're just going to Hippieville. Or like if you go to San Francisco and you're like on Hayes Street or all those.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
It's chill though. It's totally chill, right? So
yeah.
You go in there and we're like, look, I found that they had this little like bookshelf area and had like all these like books and like see all this stuff about Bigfoot. And there was some of my UFOs. I'm like, oh, cool. That's my area. So I started flipping through it. And I actually bought a couple. There was like folklore of Northern California. So I bought this book and I went to the front and there's an older lady. She was probably in her 70s at the time. And she's like, oh, blah, blah, and she's all, are you from around here? I go, well, we live close. We live down south a little bit, but, we up here all the time. So jumping into it, I told her I was kind of into that stuff. And then she's like, her husband comes out and she's like, well, we have people around here have heard some crazy stuff and we know some people that have seen some stuff or whatever. And I go, really? And then I said, yeah, we've heard stories too. Once they realized we were local and that we kind of were not really there, like with the news or like trying to like make fun of them and mocking them. The husband was like, he goes, well, I got a story for you. He goes, a friend that we know, for a long time now. He goes, him and his son were hiking one time the mountain. They used to go to the trail at the top, and he goes, it was a few years ago, but this was like 94, so probably like 91, 90, whatever. And he says that they went to the top of they hiked to the top of the mountain. It takes about, if you go to the top of the mountain, because I've done it before too, it's got a nice trail. There's two ways. If you do the mountain hike, you got to be all geared up with poles and hiking the glaciers. But if you just want to do the regular hike, you kind of have to go during the summertime. There's too much snow and stuff. So you got to get there early in the morning. It's about 8 to 10 hour trip up to summit and back to base camp or to the parking lot. So I've done it before. It's pretty exhausting, but I was a lot younger. No way I could do it now. But anyways, he used to do it and he took his son who'd been doing it the last 3 or 4 years previous. This one time they'd made it to the top of the summit. They were about 2/3 of the way down. About 2/3 of the way down, they stopped, take a break or whatever, and they were eating snacks. And the way that he had told them was that they saw a guy walking up the trail towards them, and he was wearing like a robe, like a robe or whatever, and he had like long white blonde hairish or whatever, and he was really tall. They said that he didn't really think about it till later because they were sitting down, how tall the guy was. He was tall and center, and he goes, and he thought too, he goes like, this guy's going to the top of the mountain kind of late in the day. He doesn't have any gear with him or anything. Like he's not going to stay the night. Where's his tent? All that stuff. But the dad was kind of just like, whatever, right? He said he saw that he noticed that his boots or whatever were like, not like your normal hiking boots, but almost kind of like leathery type boots, whatever, not really mountaineering boots. But the guy was really nice. Said, how are you doing? He goes, oh, fine, and he goes, have safe. They kind of exchange whatever. And he says, he goes, where are you hiking? He goes, well, I'm just going to stay on the mountain. And that's what he told the dad. And he says when he was talking, he felt completely normal and everything. And then he goes, all right, well, wished him well. And he went up, started walking up the hill. They started down the hill. And about 30 minutes later, he said he started feeling really uneasy and really had a weird sensations coming over his body, almost kind of like something doesn't seem right, because he started replaying that whole encounter and stuff.
Yeah, the intuition. Right?
Yeah, and he asked his son wasn't really paying. And then he asked his son, he goes, and then his son started asking questions. Did you notice what he was wearing? He goes, yeah, like, didn't that seem like that's not really what you're wearing? And he's going to stay the night up there? Like, he goes, it's too late in the day to be going up there. So they said they were really talking about it, and they thought, okay, maybe he's just like some, because there's a lot of weirdos up there. Let's be honest, right? So he says they get down and they can see the parking lot where there's a bunch of people there that stay the night or whatever. That's kind of their base camp. And they'll leave in the morning, and they could hear the music playing and people were drinking down there and stuff. And so they're kind of stopped. And then he kind of looks back up the hill. He says about maybe you could see up the trail about 1,000 yards. And he saw that dude at the very top of the trail, just standing there looking at him. And he's like, dude, he goes, we never looked back. And he goes, he was sitting there. He's like, that's freaking weird. Like, I'm weirded out. So he goes, come on, let's go. So they get down to their car in the parking lot and they're loading up. They look back up, and at the very top of that, where you could see now probably a couple hundred ups on the hill, 100 yards up on the hill, I guess they could see that guy standing at the very top again, like he was falling down there, and they were standing there. Everybody else wasn't really paying attention to the guy or whatever, but he just was really spooked out. So him and his kid got in the car and they drove down into town where they lived. And he says, you know what, instead of going home, he drove to the sheriff's station and kind of was like, reported this guy. He's like, this guy's giving me really weird vibes. I just want to, he didn't do anything illegal, but just in case you get on the report of this guy, here's a description. And so he described him. And so I was like, me and my friends at this time were like, dude, that's weird. Like, maybe it was this, we're thinking all this stuff. Like, that's not where the story gets weird. So about 3 months later, apparently this guy that went and talked to the cops, their friend, gets a phone call from the sheriff's office saying, you need to come down to the sheriff's office. We need your help with something. Apparently what had happened 3 months later after this is this foreign couple, a guy and a girl, and I don't know, can't remember the country. I want to say it was France, but because they were speaking French, but it may have been Belgium. This is one of the details because it's been so long, but I know they were speaking French. They get down into town. They had an encounter and they're freaking out. They're crying, everything, like genuine, like they're just completely like freaking out. No one at the sheriff's station could speak French. So they were calling around. They finally knew somebody that could speak French, I guess, from the high school, whatever, the French teacher or whatever, came there to translate. So I guess out of the translation was as they were hiking up the mountain, they were about halfway up and they ran into two guys when they were up there. Same kind of description, long blondish hair, in the robes, whatever, but really tall. Because they're foreigners, they thought, they said they spoke, as soon as they said hello, they spoke to him in French. Like these two guys could speak French, which is weird. So they're like, they thought they were Native Americans because they didn't know. They knew there was natives around there that they don't know what Native Americans look like. So they're like, oh, that's really cool. Like, but they can speak French. And they said they felt really good at first or whatever. And they said, just stay on the path. And it was a real nice cordial conversation. And then they said, as they started walking up the mountain, they noticed that these two figures went off the trail kind of into some the rocky area of the mountains. And then it goes over a gorge, like a big gully, like a canyon up to the mountain. And they literally said, as they were watching the moon, they started walking. And as they would have went off the cliff, they started basically levitating and just floated across the canyon. And they said it went, hundreds of yards, and then got to the other side of the canyon on the mountain. And as they took like 5 more steps, they just completely vanished.
Damn.
And they completely lost it. I guess they were, the sheriff was like, dude, these people are smoking mushrooms or doing something. They completely were seemed like they were, one was a doctor and the other one was like a friend and had like a really good job too. So they checked out. They did, I don't know about drug tests or, but the guy came down there because the sheriff was like, hey, this guy described this guy's the same description you gave me 3 months ago. And when they sketched out the pictures or whatever, they literally was like the same, except there was 2 this time. And when they told me that, I was like, no way, dude. I've never had any desire to go hike that mountain again, dude. You know what I mean? That's just a trip.
One thing I wanted to talk about was the whole, you'd mentioned it before too, like you don't leave the tree line. Is that kind of what you're talking about, right?
Yeah,
that
above the tree line. This all happened above the tree line. I don't know if you read in your thing, if you saw the thing about the older ski resort that burnt down and stuff.
No, I actually didn't.
Yeah, that's a thing too, because that was actually the Indians, Native Americans. They warned the people, don't build the ski resort there. That's like the most sacred part of the mountain, and it's above the tree line.
Yeah,
and it burned down.
Well, and so one thing I want to kind of bring up is so this connects the Lemurians, right? Or however you pronounce it. that whole story is essentially an offshoot of the Atlantis story, which is an offshoot of the Anunnaki, which we covered last week. And like the when I was diving into the Lemurians, it basically, like, it talked about a flood, it talked about a catastrophe, a war between different beings, which is what we talked about in those Anunnaki episodes the last few weeks. And they essentially escaped the war in Atlantis and moved shop to Shasta, which is where this whole story connects. And one of the things I the Numenorians, no, sorry Pilgrim.
Numenorians. That was based off Atlantis. He got inspired from Atlantis. J.R. Tolkien.
Okay, so maybe so then. But what I was trying to get at, excuse me, what I was trying to get at was that so it connects back to the Atlantis and the Anunnaki, and I have a belief that I think a lot of those stories are similar with religion, specifically with the Bible. And when you're talking about how they basically, in that story, how they walked across a gorge, that sounds oddly familiar to walking on water, in my opinion. And so you kind of see what the connections I'm trying to build here. Exactly. You have the blonde hair is obviously different than what was represented in the Bible for Jesus, but still, I think it kind of just lays a groundwork that there's a possibility that maybe all these stories hint to different, like these prophets in all these different religions, maybe are hinting to just a higher form of I don't want to say like a reality is probably a good way to put it. And I always kind of go back to thinking about, like, if you were to go back in time right now where we're at, and you were to hand someone an iPhone, they'd probably start clicking it, and if it was unlocked, they'd realize it does certain things, but it would be magic to them, right?
Absolutely.
So maybe a lot of this stuff, and I'm going off the rails here, but you know what I'm saying? Like, maybe this stuff that we consider supernatural is just a level of reality that we're not able to actually dissect and actually, like, look at it in a very intellectual way, because we're just not capable of that.
I think that has a lot to do with that. I've thought that for a long time. We're just it's a higher level of existence that we just can't even understand. That's one of the things they say about Mount Shasta, is it's like a gathering place for, like, ascended masters, like a ascended civilization that has reached a higher point of spirituality, and that's kind of where they kind of chill.
It's like there's a few places, I can't remember all the places where they, that metaphysical stuff where people talk about, where there's like those portals or those places where there's just draws so much energy. Mount Shasta is one of those. Another place I can think of that's been mentioned, Sedona, Arizona.
Bermuda Triangle,
Asia too. Like, there's places around the world in South America that have these, like, how that people get, really weird. They mess with the magnetic, your, like, magnets and stuff. And so it's just really interesting how that all comes around. It doesn't matter what culture you're from, but it all kind of intertwines, like we talked about. There's no reason why Native Americans should be having the same feeling but you get it too. Like I've been through, like, all these places to the Pacific Northwest, driven by Mount Hood and Mount Rainier, and you see them, like, they take up the sky, and, like, oh, cool, big mountain. I've seen stuff, but when you go by Shasta, dude, or you see it coming, because you can drive in Northern California and you can see that mountain sitting up above everything else for hours away, from where you're at driving wise. But when you get there, it's like something, like, it eludes you. Like, you can turn away and not have there, and you feel like it's watching you. It's a weird sensation, man.
Yeah, and it's been a while since I actually, like, drove past it. Most of you guys know, like, I grew up, like, South Bay, so I've only driven through that area a handful of times, like when I'm going to Oregon or something like that. I can't really speak to the feeling of it. I do know, though, that, like, because there's been a perspective that it kind of shoots up out of nowhere and it's like it's placed in a weird area. I don't actually buy that one, or just because like I think within the last decade, like there was like it caused fires, like forest fires, because of lava spewing out. So there's a level of you know, like geologically, like it makes sense. It's a mountain if there's, and it's volcanic if there's like fire spewing out of it. I do. This is kind of funny one. There's that quote from Thor. Magic and science are the same thing. I don't remember the exact quote, but one thing that when I was looking into the Lemurian topics, like there's a portal. It's an unknown scene, or an unknown city that
Telos.
you can't see. Well, like when I was listening to that, so like this is literally Wakanda, right? Because people are traveling in and out of the mountain, and so I thought that was kind of funny, right? That like
That's what I thought too.
yeah, I I do kind of I see the magic and science contradiction behind it, though. Another one's like what Bob Lazar said about how like you drop off if you were to put a motorcycle with a key in like the 1500s, it would they'd fiddle with it for a little bit, but eventually they'd figure out like you put the key into the slot. They won't know how it works or how the plastic's made or the metals were crafted, but they'd be able to figure out how to put the key in there, sit on it like a horse, and it would go. So yeah, I think that's an interesting one.
And at first, they wouldn't have any idea what they were even looking at.
Yeah.
How much of that stuff around us, including things at Shasta, we can't even understand it.
Well, and then it would turn into after they figure that out, it would turn into them praising it like a god.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
the flying chariot in the Bible, maybe that was not a chariot. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Yep. No, I mean, like, it's funny though, like how this stuff is. Like, last week you did the Emerald tablets, and in there, like, it talks about like all the stuff that this kind of relates to. But it's like I said, it's just one of those things. Like, it's, you start listening, you hear these stories, and we talk about like the legends and the mythology behind it, and some of it's pretty recent. This is our time. Like, these are our legends, our mythology, not the like the old stuff, the Anunnaki and all that stuff. Those are thousands. We're still hearing about that, but there's like still legends and stuff going on
For
right
sure.
now. And that's what gets me, is like, this stuff is so recent. How are we still like having these issues that, where people like might discount it or whatever, but it's nice that we can have these conversations, and not, I feel like the conversations now that you can have with people, you don't get laughed off or like get like, oh, whatever, man, blah blah, that's BS, like you used to. Like, I remember growing up, like there's was more like, if I were to tell that story, say back then, and we talked about other people, they're like, oh, whatever, that's a ghost story or some sort of like joke or something like that. Whereas now you can be like, well, they did find this and this could be that, but
Well,
it's something to make to think about.
Also, it's like there's I think it's changed. Obviously, I didn't grow up in that time period, but I like it's changed to the point where you could laugh it off. But then it's pretty easy for people like us to say, hey, well, if Congress is actually taking the time of day to do a whole hearing about these sightings and UFOs, like, yeah, your opinion is just as valid as mine at this point, when you have high personnel and military like seeing these things and whistleblowing about it, right? Like, I don't know. I do want to share real quick something, and kind of goes along the lines of what we were talking about before, or what the story you were talking about. So, okay, first of all, this website's Jaluan. I'm not even going to
totally dependable.
Yeah,
Totally
exactly.
dependable.
I'm not even going to pretend like that's a good.
We can trust it. We can trust it.
I think
it's more so for the story. So Yeah, I'm not going to read the whole thing. I just want to kind of give you guys, the viewers, a
Oh, this is recent.
chance to understand. Well, I don't know if it's recent because
2010. That's
it was.
I think
Is
this
that
was
what it?
2000. I thought it was 2011 or 2010, somewhere
it
around
says, yeah,
there.
2010. That's pretty recent, you know.
So yeah, so this is the robot grandmother one.
Wow, that's crazy.
It's a crazy story. Okay, so I'll just start here at this one. At this paragraph, presence of mysterious figures in Mount Shasta. What happened to John Doe is quite different from the existence of divine power. It can be said that John's abductors were technically advanced. The enigmatic tale of disappearance of a 3-year-old took place October 1st, 2010. The family, along with the 3-year-old John Doe, came to enjoy fishing, trekking in the forest near Mount Shasta in California. While setting up in a tent and preparing to go fishing in a nearby lake, the family got distracted, which was literally for a second, and then they discovered that the child was missing. 6 o'clock in the evening. It was already getting dark when the disappearance took place, so a quick search in the thickets yielding nothing but was not surprising at all. After a couple of hours, the family decided to call the police and report the boy's disappearance. Rescuers began to search the forest. Uh, They repeatedly examined before. The child was alive and did not sustain any wounds. The child's parents considered the trauma as a strong fight due to the fact that the boy got lost and wandered alone in the forest. Several weeks passed after this incident. The boy remained silent about what happened to him. One day, his parents left John at the house of his grandmother, Kathy, whom the boy looked at his grandmother and said that he didn't like the other Cappy, which is his grandmother.
Mm.
The grandmother bewilderedly asked him to explain what he meant, to which the boy responded that he was in the forest when a woman appeared on the path disguised as his grandmother. The boy held his hand, uh, took into a deep cave underneath the mountain. She took the child into a dark, cold room where there were a lot of spiders and robotic figures in Mount Shasta. Those robots stood motionless, and several things such as wallets, pistols, etc., scattered on the floor of the room. I'm gonna pause there for a second.
Wow.
If this were the case, if this is true, there's a level of like, okay, a lot of these missing persons and you know, the stories of people going missing and disappearing out there, it could very well be explained in a situation like this. So I'm not gonna go through the whole article just because it's like
Yeah.
it's kind of more of a yeah.
That boy was found in a place that wasn't far from where they were at, behind like a bush that the searchers had scoured through like multiple times. That was the trippy part about it.
Hey,
Well,
They had covered ground and looked where he was supposedly found, and he was nowhere to be found when they were searching for him.
well, and you know, before we dive into like our opinions of it, the grandmother also says after she hears this that she was actually out there a few nights before or a few weeks before, camping with her friends, and she actually ends up like blacking out and passing out and waking up with a bunch of or not a bunch but two um like what
Puncture
she
marks.
thought puncture marks, but what she thought of were like bug bites at the time. And you know, it is one of those stories where like, you know, I it's hard to believe, but then like at the same time there's just a bunch of stuff that connects to abductions that
Yeah, and
it's
there's so many abduction
yeah.
cases specifically on Shasta, weird ones.
Yeah. It's weird. I'm telling you, like it's just one of those things too. It's not like it's people. It's not like it's it's weird how even just and not just Mount Shasta, but this whole Northern California, there's a lot of missing people in Northern California, and a lot of it is probably chalked up to like drugs and all that stuff because you have all the cartel Mexican grows
Right.
up here and stuff like that. People just disappear, and I think a lot of that's tied to that. But the Mount Shasta stuff, it's been going on for decades. I mean, for almost a century, from the early settlers and people just. I mean, there's that original guy that tried to say he had been inside the mountain. Did you read that one? He was from Stockton and then tried to get this expedition to go find the entrance to the
Oh,
cave.
the J.C. Brown, the
Yeah,
J.C.
T.C.
Brown
Brown,
guy.
right? And then all of a sudden, he just basically vanishes overnight. And no one ever sees him again. And
Oh
they,
yeah, he said he was looking for gold, and he
yeah,
found like an 11-mile tunnel, and at
mhm,
the end of the tunnel there was like the remains of an ancient city with machinery, statues,
mhm,
weapons, tablets, all worship rooms,
yep,
giant skeletons, all this shit like that. And he was
oh yeah,
convinced that he found it, found like
yeah,
the ancient Lemurian
yeah.
civilization.
It's crazy, man. Like all that stuff is wild, and then you just put all the different stories together, and then it's kind of people see. Then there's like the stuff that we can see, the physical aspect. You get all the different religious people from, like I said, come in there, and um, people go in there and they start worshiping crystals and stuff. So then that's why you start getting like, oh, it's just a bunch of crazy. So you have to filter. You have to kind of filter
Right.
like what's legit, what's could be like some drug induced story, and then what is like kind of like that little bit of a gray area, right?
Yeah.
Maybe it's like some of it's true, maybe some of it's an exaggeration of something, but there's something there, and it's funny because like the locals, like they said, they don't want to talk about it really with outsiders because they don't want to get mocked. But then,
Right.
they'll talk
Right.
it amongst themselves and everything, and that's it. It's just, and I know there's other places like that too, but Shasta just has that stigma. And I mean, it's weird.
Yeah. And one thing, sorry for stepping out for a second.
It's like,
But one thing I wanted to kind of play devil's advocate on with the story we just read about the robot grandmother is there are a few things, or specifically one thing I just don't like about that story that I find like that works against it being compelling is that uh so this kid goes missing. I don't doubt that. I think the grandmother, the conversation between him and his grandmother is definitely a little weird. But
mm,
so how would this family, or how would, let's say it's the same robed people you brought up in your story, how
mm,
would they know that that grandmother and her, how would they know that her grandchild would be walking through the forest a few weeks after, right?
right.
So, that's where I'm saying, because like they're talking about like essentially genetic manipulation, where you could they took DNA from her
Mm,
and created some sort of like skin out of her, right? And so it's like the because that's from what I've gathered, that's a pretty big story surrounding the Shasta topic and I just feel like it just doesn't make too much sense. Like, how could they plan that out and know that like an extended family member of hers is going there, you know, a few weeks after that they like decide to catch and snatch her. It just
yeah,
that kind of falls apart. The
it
story
does.
part in my head,
Yeah.
and I haven't found anything like other than YouTube videos about this and little
Mhm.
Reddit articles about that. I don't know. What do you think about that?
No, I agree, and like I think some of the stories too that you get, like what I was just saying to Chris, while you stepped out, I think they're some will get exaggerated. I think that, and
Yeah.
that's why they seem so weird. Like I said, I mean, I've heard some too that sounded like, oh, those guys were just probably doing shrooms or something. They weirded out. I think you can chalk up, honestly, because of what you got going up. I think you can chalk up a lot of it to that. But there's some that just kind of like when you talk about even some of the stuff down when people see stuff in the sky, or you got to look at what the source. You got to look
Yeah.
at like what would be their motivation to go ahead and make up a story like that. So like
Right.
when these people told me this even back then, that somebody they knew who was reputable came out and told this story, and then told them about how these foreigners like literally freaked out. One was like a doctor, and like another person that was a professional, and it's like they filed official reports to the sheriff's department.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Like, what
Yeah.
would be the motive of doing that?
Yeah,
Because
right, exactly.
especially as a foreign national, like you don't know, like that you had a weird experience. What's weird about it too was they each described, or when they first saw these people, that they felt really like comfortable and everything was good, almost like, yeah, we're just hanging out, like they knew the person. And then as soon as the person was gone, they said they started getting basically the heebie-jeebies, or like not feeling like they started getting paranoid and stuff. What would cause that,
Hmm.
almost like there's some sort of like aurora or something got around them that causes like we're going to make you feel. If you think about alien abductions, when people get abducted and stuff, how they can't move, there's this kind of like they're scared, but they can't do anything about it. Their body can't
Well,
move.
so I would actually say that the story you presented to us at the beginning of the podcast, much more believable
Yeah.
For sure,
than the one
100%.
the robot one. The robot grandma one's wild. I won't
Well,
lie.
Yeah.
robot grandma one, that her addition of the whole robot aspect, that was added on later on, like weeks later. It was some secondhand like story that, so it
Yeah.
wasn't even part of the original story. So I mean,
Right.
there's a pretty good chance that was bullshit anyways.
It is, but like I also with this stuff is like I always think with these stories it's like on average 85% bullshit, 25%
Right.
serious,
That's
which is
what I'm
what
saying. Yeah.
which is what I think about like the Anunnaki. Like most of it is not quote unquote bullshit, but is like um manipulated is the word,
Right.
right? It's manipulated throughout time and generation. It's this constant game of whispers, or not whispers, of telephone, right, between generations and between people, right? And
Yeah.
so and the main thing why I find the Shasta thing or the Shasta topic interesting is, coming off of the Anunnaki is like it's just more and more there, like connections are being built between different stories, and
Yeah.
there's something obviously in front of us that like we just don't have enough pieces of the puzzle to actually put together to get the full image of what's
Right.
happening, right? And the Lemuria thing is something that like, is there a city beneath the mountain that there's a portal? I don't
Supposedly,
I
it's
don't
the
fucking
entryway
know.
to Agartha.
Yeah.
It was the entryway to Agartha, the Middle Earth,
So
or the world in the world, or whatever.
which is funny because like we were talking about Marvel having a connection to it, like with Wakanda, and Pilgrim had mentioned the Numenorians, and there's a connection between how like they're based off of Atlantis,
Yeah. That's J.R.R.
and
Tolkien. He got
so
inspired to make that from that.
so it's not just our fiction that's being influenced by these type of stories, but it's also like history that's being influenced by it in some way. Whether or not you want to believe in aliens or not, you can't argue with certain things, like how Mesopotamians had like their gods are directly connected to the Greek gods, which are directly connected to the Egyptian gods, and those are directly connected to the Anunnaki. And so like
They
there's
just have
a
names.
yeah,
They're literally the same gods of everything.
yeah,
Usually
yeah,
usually sky stuff,
yeah.
right? Planets, stars, whatever, and they just rename.
Well, and the Native Americans
Yeah. Oh,
literally naming like it's a sacred place for the sky people, like
Yep.
what you're talking about, right? The sky gods, like
and they're not the first ones. Like the Native Americans, they had different names for sky people. Like sky
Oh,
people,
yeah.
that name has been that whatever tribe it is, they have their name for it, but it always translates to sky people, and it's all over North America. You know what I mean? And that's another thing that was a story too. Sorry, we can get back to it, but I just
no,
thought
you're fine.
about Shasta is when the first white settlers came to Northern California. When when the first white settlers came to most of North America, it was like it was on, and they, people had never seen white people before. But when they came to Northern California, the tribes up here weren't scared of them. They thought they were the people from. That's what they said. Oh, you're from the mountain, and that's what freaked them out. They're like, "What are you talking about?" I go, "No, we're, whatever. Like you're." What they said, "No, you're from the mountain and stuff." And they were, "What mountain?" And they pointed at it. And I think and that's what trips me out. Like they literally thought because they'd seen white people before, and they
Yeah.
heard the stories that this person was
Well,
white. It's like white people are showing up; they think they're the gods.
well,
Right.
Quetzalcoatl, right? South
Yeah,
America,
Right.
Quetzalcoatl,
yeah.
described as a bearded, what pale skinned, blonde hair,
Mhm.
wearing robes. Like there's too many connections
Right.
that are being built across this stuff,
It's crazy.
which is the almost sole reason why I get drawn into this stuff, because I'm just it's the patterns that we're seeing, and I think they're
Yeah.
far past like coincidences. You know what I'm
And
saying, guys?
that's where it has to be. Like you see it in front of you, right? There's enough signs that something's there, but you just have to go about it the right way. You can't just rush into it. You got to take baby steps and really pay attention to what you're looking at and what you're ingesting. And it's hard to dig through it without getting buried in bullshit.
Well, not only that, you have to be willing to do it, right? You
Right.
have to whether or not you believe this, like, because I'm actually more in like the further I go into it, I'm like, I don't know if I believe 100% of this. I don't know if I believe 20% of it,
Mhm.
but I'm willing to actually look at it, right?
Yeah.
Um, and I think that's the attitude you need to have
Yeah.
when you start covering topics like this. I'm not going to just sit there and be like, well, it's outside of the frame of my reality and my
Right.
understanding and how I was raised and the beliefs I was brought up with, but I will still entertain it just to like kind of get a better framework. And honestly, like a lot of this the Anunnaki stuff and how it connects to the Lemurians,
Mhm.
like I just don't know. I don't know how much that I can actually invest in, other than being like, this is kind of weird, and there's a coincidence, more than a coincidence happening between the two, and
Yeah.
Quetzalcoatl, right? And South America, Native Americans. You've got all these multiple cultures, and the whole connection between, like, the idea with the Lemurians, something we left out was how at one point they are like they're it's that which we know geographic or historically had happened, a bridge, a physical land bridge between continents at one point,
Mhm.
right
Right.
before the ice age and during, so like that's another one and they found bones of lemurs, right? Lemurian, right?
Yeah.
Lemur,
Yeah.
so like that's another part that was like kind of baffling to me, like, oh shit, like the guy that started studying the lemurs and the connection of genetics between monkeys and lemurs, and it also connects to the theory that Native Americans and Southeast Asians and Pacific Islanders all kind of share a culture, like within gods and within
Yeah.
language, even like
Yep.
that's stuff that's like
Mhm.
that's stuff that I can't ignore. I'm like, that's
Yeah.
like, when you start connecting history and science
Mhm.
and culture, and then also on top of that, people like to discard like the fringe side of it, which is what we're talking about right now. Like that's where I'm like, there, no, no, no. Like this deserves at least some level of attention, does it
Yeah.
not?
Yeah. It does. And you got to try and look at it you can't look at it through today's people lens, like the way people see the world today, because
Exactly.
that's what makes it seem so crazy to everybody. They just can't picture it being
Yeah.
reality in their world as we exist today. But what if there was a civilization that was that advanced back then? It's not even the same. It's so far past what we could comprehend. That's
Mm-hmm.
why most people can't do it. It's just beyond our comprehension. But
Mhm.
I mean, we could get there possibly one day, but people have to be willing to go there.
I thought it was really interesting too when you read about like when we talked about like what when you read about Atlantis and Lemuria and stuff like that, how Lemurians were more of like I guess you'd say more of the love piece, really connected to nature and the earth and stuff like that, whereas the Atlanteans were more into technology and stuff like that. And so when they had their war, obviously the Atlanteans were technology superior. But the funny thing was, is, and I think this is the part that goes back, they say was in the Emerald Tablets. They said basically after they destroyed Lemuria or whatever, and then you had the people that had escaped the destruction, went underground, basically with the tunnels, was able to, basically just be hideaway or whatever for time. Atlantis, because whatever, was basically punished or whatever because it suffered it from its own vanity, and that's why it basically just self-destructed.
Yeah.
And it was basically a punishment by the gods. And so I thought that was kind of interesting, like, what gods? you know? So, and here we are, both civilizations are gone, but you don't hear about any other possible survivors of Atlantis, right? But you hear about possibilities of cities still of Lemuria that had survived.
Well, but like there's that, I forget the name, the Japanese monolith beneath the ocean. I forget what it's in Japan. It's similar to the Atlantis story. And those both connected to Lemuria. So it's just, this stuff super. It's wild to think that we've got these myths, or however you want to represent them. We've got these myths that are thousands of years old.
Mhm.
And we have modern institutions that are like so passively aggressively tossing these things aside,
Oh,
and
yeah.
are like, they just don't like you. We already know about this, and we know what this is happening.
Right.
Like, they speak like it's in fact. It's just, and this is something that constantly comes up in our conversations.
Yeah.
That like there's no way that this is possible because we've already debunked it and
Right.
in some other form. And it goes to what Eric Weinstein just said on that last podcast that we were talking about with Terrence Howard, how the scientific community is like very much like that right now.
I was just gonna bring that up. I was just gonna bring that up.
Well, yeah, they're looking for reasons to tell you you're wrong, rather than
Right.
saying maybe there's something worth here looking at, right?
Right. Yeah. Because it might step on whoever's work, so they want to shut it down before it even gets a chance to start.
Well, that's just it. If I have a theory, if I've come up with a study and everyone embraces it, and I publish books and stuff, well, what happens if King Chris comes along and comes out with new findings and publishes a book? My book stops selling, right? It's a money
Wrong.
thing.
Fake news.
Yeah, you got to follow the money, man. It's like anything, just follow the money.
But in reality, you think you'd be proud that your work led to further discovering something else,
Absolutely.
And if it was for the actual love and the history and to actually know the truth, you wouldn't want to step on that and hold that back.
Absolutely.
Well, again, and that's why I like this. The Shasta one, again, like a lot of the stuff that these topics are so big, that it's hard to like pinpoint exactly where these conversations are
Where to
going to lead
start?
to. Right. And that's why I feel like the first couple hundred of these conversations we're going to have they're always going to it's going to be a blanket, and then we can start kind of nitpicking and diving into different because we've covered how many different things. I don't think we've even touched the Yeti yet, right? Or the Bigfoot stories
Yeah, we didn't touch the Bigfoot.
around Shasta.
That's a whole other deal, right?
Right, exactly. But like, that could also, that's another.
There's been talks of that's probably like a creature from an alien creature that was planted here, or maybe not alien. We talked about from the portals coming from another dimension or something, because they disappear. They pop in and they pop out.
So this might sound funny, but right. So like, we just did the Anunnaki thing and the genetic mutations, which to that, like, if you follow that story, we are a genetic mutation of the Anunnaki, right? Demigods and whatnot. So how we do breeding with dogs,
Right.
and you have a pit bull, and then you have a French bulldog, which is essentially a retarded pit bull.
Yeah.
What if a Yeti is just a bad breeding of it?
Like maybe like a mulligan, like somebody.
Yeah.
We're just trying out, like, oh well, no, we gotta
And
release that one, let him run
that,
out.
and that's why Chewbacca's like, oh, you know, it's just like, you know, it's just a retarded like fuck up, right?
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
like that was the first version. They let it loose, and they're like, it's not going to do anything. And then there's just a few of them running around, fucking crossbreeding with each other, and like it
Yeah,
could just be that, like it's not smart. That's why it throws rocks at people when it sees them,
Mhm.
because they're
yeah,
just bulldogs of the human race, you
yeah.
know.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like, what's tough about that one is like I've heard the stories, and like I've been in places where like people have sighted in these wilderness areas where there literally was like documented sightings. I've never experienced anything for it, but that doesn't mean it's not real because I
Right.
was deer hunting when I was up there and I didn't see a fucking deer either. So
Yeah.
I know there's deer there. I saw the tracks, but there it's weird because like once again you're kind of with this with that whole situation. The stories go way back with the Native Americans, and they gave each tribe gave them names and stuff, and there's something there, and whether they were a creature that doesn't exist anymore, or maybe it's gotten rare and rare over the year because maybe man is like just encroached on its habitat and killed enough habitat, even
Yeah.
though we have. But how come all my biggest problem is no one's got a really good picture, even with the technology now. People have phones on them and they're out in the woods, and
Yeah.
you would think somebody by now, even like when you'll see stuff now where people are taking pictures and photos. I'm like, dude, seriously, like, what phone do you have? Is that you walking around with a flip
Yeah.
phone, a key or something? Because that should be a better film that you have, like.
Yeah.
And if it is really good, then you're like, dude, that's a total costume. And that's my biggest problem that I have with it because I want to believe that one. But it's like, damn, dude, there's some shit out there like where people having experiences and like, you'll
Ooh.
see like the sounds and stuff like that. But I want to see actual footage or, not casts, not wood knocks, not freaking vocalizations, but actual like you need to see like a legitimate
Yeah.
video or something.
Bigfoot's one of the harder ones for me to believe.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
I just I've never been able to buy into it really.
so it's kind of like, for me, it's like there's flat Earth, then
yeah,
there's Bigfoot,
Oh,
then there's UAPs,
bro,
you
yeah.
know.
flat Earth is
Like,
like
is like
I,
that's I mean when the yeah, like I've always like thought that when they even said like, when they for decades now they said, hey, there's so much or so much proof of UFOs that if you took it to a court of law and said, hey, can this be like substantial evidence to convict? They'd be like 100%. We have enough that there's UFOs. And I think now we're seeing that with the government finally coming out of the woodwork, and there's been just so many people credible. But Bigfoot's tough because I mean there have been credible people that have witnessed something. I think I'm not going to die that people haven't seen stuff or experienced stuff, but it just the evidence trail is just not as established as say as a UFO.
I don't know, man. The second people start talking flat Earth, Bigfoot, and moon landing, I'm like,
Well, the flat Earth one is just, I mean,
flat Earth is fucking retarded.
I
that's
don't, I don't know. You guys think about the moon landing one? I
that
think
one's got me. That one now,
What that we did or didn't go.
dude, that one's really got me like more
uh,
irritated now because, like, I mean, I had NASA's back for a long time, but I found out a bunch of stuff now about NASA that I'm like, dude, are you serious? Like, we'll
There's
see
some
these
sketchy
pictures.
shit.
Dude,
I think we went, and they still added a level of deception, because I don't know. I think it costs a lot of money to get out there that they don't want to spend. Uh, them being the government, so I don't know, man. The
Yeah.
moon land, it's another one that I'm kind of holding off on, because I just like
yeah,
I really don't know what I think about it yet.
You could tell me that we just went to lower Earth orbit and filmed the rest in Las Vegas or somewhere out there, and I wouldn't be surprised.
That's what I'm
that's where I'm
saying.
at that now. I'm at that now because, I want, like I said, that's one of those things you want to believe, but then I have questions about that because, like, they did bring back samples and they have shit that you can't find on Earth that you could only get from out, like the minerals, how it's made. They're like, you can't get it done. Thousands and thousands of tons of that shit on each mission. The Russians, if you really wanted to go ahead and bust somebody's balls and say you didn't go to the moon. The Russians have every reason, like, dude, they totally faked this shit. Like, look, like, you know what I mean? And they
Yeah.
even
Yeah.
said they went. There's, the space agencies, like there's multiple now, have taken pictures of where they've had the craft that have gone around the planet that didn't land, but took pictures of the sites, and you can literally see like where the sites are at. They still have the lunar module sitting there. There's tracks where they were driving. Like you can, unless they made that photo up, why would the European Space Agency make that up? There's things like that. I'm like, okay, well, either they're paying people off, to fund their space expeditions or whatever. But then you see NASA taking these pictures. Every time you see, oh, look at this picture the telescope took of this galaxy like 20 billion light years away, and it's all colored. That's all bullshit. It's an artist rendition, because what
Yeah.
it does is the telescope doesn't see color; it sees the rays or whatever. And what they do, it's all numbered. That's how it translates. And then they assign a number to the light spectrum, and then the artist rendition goes and paints it in. No one ever told you that though. For
Right.
freaking 50 years, we thought we were looking at real pictures, and that's bullshit. Someone needs to say that. And then
Well,
like anytime you see like they've had China and India both landed on the planet with modules in the last couple of years, right? But they were all like freaking look like video game landings. Why didn't you show actual footage of landing on the moon?
so my perspective is that kind of goes to what I pulled up with Pilgrim, is that we actually went there and we just didn't have the technology to film it while we're out there. Like we just we didn't
Yeah.
have the ability to actually film it. So we said it'll be easier if we just source this project to Kubrick.
Right.
He'll make it look realistic. We went there, but like, and we know that we went there, but like it's going to cost too much of just random taxpayer dollars
Yeah.
or however it gets
I could
funded.
get with that. I could buy that.
And that's kind of where I stand with the moon landing. I think we went there. I think the footage is tampered with or is just fake all
Altogether.
around.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I do feel.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No. I'm done.
Gray Pilgrim says, "Can't you prove that we were on the moon with a really good telescope?" I don't know about that, but I do know, and I don't know the exacts, but I guess there is. I think it was Apollo 15, one of the, not the last moon mission, but the one before. They left like a reflective dish or mirror there. So
Yeah.
if you have a powerful enough laser, you can actually point it at the moon and have the reflection come back. That is true. I don't know, like they've done that before at multiple universities, and it's at one of the sites, and it's like a reflective dish or mirror. And if you shoot the laser, it's got to be powerful enough though to reach it, and it'll come back, and you can get the reflection. And that's one of the reasons they say how come you can't, how come no one ever uses that as an example. But yeah, dude, I mean, we're talking about the flat Earth thing. There's just so many things. I mean, they always say, oh well, but all they post is cartoon maps.
Dude, it's just
Put
so
a
fucking
balloon up,
ridiculous.
put a balloon up or something, and this ice ball shit. Like,
It's so hard to believe, man. It's so bad.
like I said,
I-
yeah, go ahead. Like, it's
I've
ridiculous.
I've gone down the wormhole to try and understand how so many people could be tied into that, and the deeper you dig, it's just bullshit, man. And there's a few documentaries out there that kind of document the rise of the whole flat Earth thing, and they have these experiments set up to kind of prove that the Earth is flat, and they all fail. And they literally, the evidence they gather basically shows that there's curvature to the Earth.
Absolutely. I mean, you don't have to be like a genius or a physicist or any sort of like
Right.
to like see things, but they'll still make their videos. But here's the funny thing is that people don't realize is there's a lot of money in flat Earth videos. YouTube, actually, the most popular videos on YouTube, maybe not now, but I remember looking like a few years ago,
Oh,
were
yeah.
flat Earth videos, and those people made bank. I mean, they made bank on the videos, and I mean, I'll be honest, they're well done. Some of them are pretty well done. Like you definitely can watch them and be like, wow, these guys did stuff. But you start looking at it, you're like, okay, come on now. Like, who are you? Who's really buying this stuff? Like,
Right.
what
They've got enough momentum up behind them now to where, like you said, the production value's gone up a lot. They're putting out some the stuff today looks a lot better than what it used to.
But this is what happens when you have the government and all these other people, the news, sending out fake news and all this shit. You don't know what to believe. So then you can go ahead and put stuff out like this that, or other things, other stuff, that conspiracy theories or other things. And then what happens then there is that maybe something such as UAPs or some of these other stories
Mhm.
that have some credibility or credence to them, they get dismissed too as like pseudo whatever, science or whatever, and we don't look at them hard enough because of all the other stuff gets thrown in with it, so
Right.
you
We
kind of
get
lose
lumped in with the
credibility.
flat earthers.
Right, yeah, exactly, and it's like, damn, dude, like, that's not even the same type of shit, you
Yeah.
know?
Well, and that's another thing when it comes to these topics. Like, I don't really pay attention to what other people think.
Yeah, you
I
can't. You
I
can't.
just want to have conversations like this, right? And actually, I think our side is starting to make a real presence now. When you have people like Michio Kaku, right? Is that his name?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like he's even like, look, I don't think there's aliens yet, but like there's stuff that needs to be observed and really looked into.
Most
And
def
Yeah.
you have people like Eric Weinstein, right? That like is or Weinstein, that like is considering, like, I don't know his position on aliens, but like he's at least of the thought that like we need to not be so close-minded on stuff.
Right.
And it becomes unfortunate, which is why, just to bring it back to a little bit to the moon thing, and space travel, I would much rather trust at this point, I'd much rather trust SpaceX over NASA right
Right.
now.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
I'm hoping and praying that like by the end of my lifetime, I get to see Elon Musk land a human on Mars. Like,
Yeah.
holy
It-
shit. And which makes sense why they would be so against like helping it. Like they, as in like the media, the establishment, if you
Right.
want to call it that, like why they would be so against him, because if he's successful and pulls that off, what imagine what could get uncovered
Right. And
having
that
a human, because for a fact the way he's running Twitter, he's not going to let any bullet, like he'd
no.
probably release it like yeah, so there's some weird shit happening on Mars right
Mhm.
now.
Yeah. And all the breakthroughs, if they ever do happen, the breakthroughs are going to be from people like that. And it's not going to be to people tied to the establishment, the government. Any advancements we make and discoveries we make is going to be through independent researchers and people that are actually out there pushing for the truth.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's
The moon's pretty crazy, man. We should do an episode on the moon sometime. Like,
what
there's some
100%.
wild ass stories about the moon, whether
Well,
it's even real, what it is.
we could
Oh, yeah,
start
get a
on
cheese.
we could start on the moon, and then we'll end up on a totally other
Yeah.
topic.
No, I
'Cause that's
like
how
the one I liked about what we were talking about flat Earth is I actually like the one that I had found when I was like looking for something else. I thought it was cool because I see about the ice wall. Those pyramids in Antarctica, man, that's kind of tied in. Like, dude,
Bro,
that because
that's
I've heard that
crazy.
before, like how that was like
I
the original
uh,
Eden and shit.
man,
That's crazy,
I think Antarctica might have to be the next one that we do.
dude. That's deep. I gotta
There's
look.
definitely stuff there.
It's
100%.
What's the
There's
story?
definitely stuff there, and we have no idea what it is.
What about the explorer that went down there? And remember the GRC? They made videos on that one. What's his name? The one guy made that
I
video.
don't know, because I haven't looked into it yet, Steezo, but you sent us in Discord that the
Yeah,
latest
that
that
one's
late
I was like, what?
wait, is that the one that you sent us in our group chat? Was that
Yeah. Pyramids
oh,
with
shit.
in Antarctica.
Yeah, dude, we might have to do an Antarctica one.
That's the one too that that's
well-
the one they talked about was like
Wait, before hold that thought. Before we branch off, because I'm totally down to talk about other stuff. Did you guys want to talk about anything else with Shasta? I think we covered most of the stuff that we wanted to.
I mean,
Yeah, it's
yeah,
cool.
that's just
I
an
just-
ongoing thing.
It's just an interesting place overall. Shasta, all the things that it's been labeled as portals, aliens, time travel, all that stuff. It's just a really interesting place.
Cool. But yeah. Sorry. Go on, Stezo. I just wanted to
Yeah,
make sure
no,
we wrapped it up.
that's where I'm at. Like Chris said, I mean, I'll keep my ears open if I hear any crazy stories that happen and stuff like that. But any new stuff up there. But yeah, no, I mean it's one of those things. Like Shasta has kind of brings it all together. Like we talked about, like he said, you got Bigfoot, aliens, portals. You got
That's
like
great.
ancient civilizations, like
Yeah.
the Native American stories. Like it's the center of the universe. That's basically what they said. So you have all this that's tied together. But it is a very weird. It's a cool like thing. It just even like I said, I get vibes now over the years. Even when I drive by, I see it all the time. I'll look up, say Shasta, and you just kind of like that mountain's watching me, dude. Like, and then we go camping up there every Memorial Day. We go camping, and it's like right there. You're like at the base. When we play golf, like the gusts from the come off the mountain and they move your ball. Like that's how close I'm now. But every time you look up at it, you're just like amazed how it's just kind of like it's very majestic,
So Stezo, are me and Chris gonna come out and do a?
Yeah, we gotta do the camp. We need to go camping, bro. We'll find King Chris behind a bush.
Yeah. I'll bring it. I'll bring a what's it called? The Tesla the Starlink.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
I'll bring a Starlink. We'll go into the tree line, and then no one will hear from us again.
Oh yeah, we'll go up there. I'll get the GPS.
Yeah, fucking
our
Blair
compass
Witch
starts
Project.
spinning and shit.
Yeah.
We'll
We'll-
float across.
We'll
the
go
mountain.
live. We'll go live at the campfire.
We can
Fucking
go live and shoot a.
Yeah.
Right now we're at the mountain. I don't know where Chris is at. Oh, he's over there laying on a bush. He's
yeah. Yeah, bring us close to a river or lake where we could catch some fish, and
Oh yeah.
and then we'll just wait up. We'll go live and fuck around with people or on
Oh, yeah.
chat and fucking
That's awesome. No, it'd be fun to do a thing for the weekend and actually just even sneak into the town and like hit up some of the locals and stuff and
for
ask them
sure.
any stories and stuff like that.
Sure,
But
maybe
they would be probably more open to talk to someone. I was all out there with like freaking cameras and shit, like filming an episode.
yeah, right.
Hey, we're just a bunch of guys here talking about some crazy shit. But yeah, no, that's basically it on that. That's a really good thing. But yeah, I need to do some more research on that Antarctica stuff because I've heard stuff before, but that's the one I heard about was the famous explorer that went down there. Do you remember seeing that video? And I think what's his name talked about that before and did a video where they went down there and I'll find it. I'll look it up.
Talking about that Richard Byrd guy.
Yes. And you remember the story when he was talking about how it was like they went down there and they found all this crazy shit and then it got basically dismissed or that information got took over by the government.
Yeah.
Well,
I think it had to do with like Project Paperclip, I think it was, or
That's it.
High
Something
Jump,
like that. Yeah,
Project High Jump, or something like that. And they went
That's
down
what-
there trying to investigate the something that was down there, and they sent a bunch of troops and stuff, and it ended up.
Fill me in because I don't know if I'm super familiar with this one, but is this the story of the guy that like he went out, like he's familiar with the area and then like disappeared completely, like flatlined? No, it's not. Okay.
No, this is the Antarctica sport. He had it right. Bird. The explorer.
Oh, Antarctica. I thought we were still on Shasta, but
No,
yeah.
I was saying for the next one you want to do. I just need to look into it a little more because I want to get that story to be relevant. I think to the pyramids because I think that's what this guy was on was the civil there was cities down there and stuff.
So did you guys? I know Chris, you watch Sean Ryan. Do you watch Sean Ryan, Stezo?
I've watched some of his stuff. I haven't watched all of his stuff.
Did you watch the one of the guy who like supposedly like worked at a government facility?
Yeah, and he had that blue like track jacket coat on. I think I know exactly what you're talking about.
Oh yeah, I did see
Yeah.
And he talked about they had the weather modification stuff down there.
Man, I don't know. That guy seems like he's full of shit.
Yeah, he was full of shit.
Yeah,
He was full of shit.
There's sometimes that's why it's hard for me to watch some of these guys. That's why I like Rogan and stuff because he kind of filters his people before he like has you on the show. Like you've had to have had enough people to where you know, for him to say, okay, you're not just some whatever. Like, I bet you it took a while for him to get Terrence Howard on there. Like,
Yeah.
okay, all right, you know, he must have had enough people that he trusts and said, you got to get Terrence Howard on your show. You know what I mean? But he's not just going to have some yahoos on there, but he does like looking into it. But he's not just going to get anybody on there. You got to have some sort of like establishment on there, I think.
Well, and he takes
Yeah.
it serious too. You look at, like, a lot of people criticized him for having Terrence Howard on, right? Well, what does he do? He spun back around within a couple weeks and had him back on with Eric Weinstein to, like,
Yeah.
set the record straight and, like, you know what I mean, kind of even
Well,
set
dude,
Terrence straight a little bit.
that's what I'm saying. Like, I don't think there's some team where they're like, you need to have Terrence on. I think more so it's the opposite, where he's like AOC on Rogan. Yeah, we'll see about that. I think more so it's Terrence. I honestly think Rogan saw a few like clips or watched some videos of Terrence and was like, I want to talk to this guy, and then tells his team to go be like, reach
Right.
out to him. You know, I want to talk to him, gets him on. But like you were
That's what he
saying,
says. Oh, go, my bad. Go ahead.
no, you go. What were you gonna say?
I was just gonna say that's what he's always said, though, that the basis of the show is literally just people he finds interesting and he wants to talk to, and he reaches
Exactly.
out and they get him on, and that's basically as simple as it is.
Well, and why I every time the second I see Eric Weinstein like in the title or description, it's immediately click. I don't care what I'm listening to. I fucking love listening. That's when we I think at one point or another need to talk about is his geometric unity.
Yeah.
Dude, that concept is fucking crazy. That like because like the dimension, like his whole theory on that is fucking insane. Like where we have dimension 1, dimension 2, 3, 4, and 5, and that's how we kind of look at it. But like he's thinking it's more of like a cube, and you've got like 14 dimensions,
Yeah.
like going like up and down, and
Yep.
that, or you know, it like more of like an XY axis rather than just a singular. Like, man, that stuff's insane. But like he's a person that I like. When he starts talking about like, I was already on the fence with Terrence Howard and what he was saying because I just couldn't understand it.
Right.
Which goes back to what we were just talking about with Rogan. Like, does such a good job of like I'm sure Eric probably texted him or called him and was like, look, man, I'm not saying bring me on the show, but like there's some issues I'm seeing with what he was saying. And like then Joe connected the two guys.
Yeah.
And honestly, I had more respect after listening to that episode about how Terrence Howard took it. He was like, there were a few times where he kind of seemed like a little childish and was like, oh, you're making, you're judgmental. But then like because Eric's so soft spoken and like just respectful, that he was like, no, look, like there are a few things that I'm like, this deserves more looking into. But at the same time, there's a lot of things that you're wrong on. And he kept standing on that. Right. And that's important to me, a layman. Like I want to see people of that level being able to be like, look, you're not actually like, you haven't taken the time to really understand what you're talking about.
Right.
And there's that message I told you guys before in Discord, like that it wasn't really a debate. It was more of Eric being like, this is where you're wrong and you need to accept that,
Right. And he was also trying to help him too, though, which I really respected that. He wasn't just there to, tell him he was wrong and tear him down. He was willing to coddle what little information was actually relevant there and actually help him present it in a better way, which was pretty cool.
Do you guys ever watch Lex Friedman?
Yeah. It's been a while, but I've watched a lot of him actually.
He'll have some of those. He doesn't go as much into that stuff as Rogan does or Sean O'Connor, but he'll have some of those people on every now and then, and he comes at it a different way. You know who he is and how he is, but he definitely tries to come. He's pretty open minded and fair. But
his can get pretty deep. His can get pretty deep.
he's more intellectual, like way more than Rogan.
Yeah.
Like he goes because he's got that intellect, so he can
Yeah.
go there. And that there's been some times where I watch some stuff, even on the most basic shit. I'm like, it ain't that. It's not that serious. Why do we there?
Well,
You know what I mean? Like it's surface. We're not surface level, bro.
and that's someone that like in the past, like dude, I watched a whole bunch of his stuff during COVID when there was nothing, like when I was just at home doing like project like building stuff just because I was bored, like listening to him. He did some stuff that like he'll have on both, which I love about Lex. He'll have on people who don't believe in aliens
Mhm.
and will still cover the space stuff on a scientific level.
Yeah.
And then he'll bring in someone that like is also a scientist that does believe in aliens,
Right.
which is why. And then they'll have like a legitimate conversation. But at the same time, I'm sitting there like, dude, I don't know what was said in the last 20 minutes, and I listened to every word
they
of it.
jump
Right. Yeah.
into
You
it.
got to cling, just hang on as tight as you can
Yeah.
and just try and make it through. But there's some really interesting shit in there though. If you can get into it,
Mhm.
he's had some interesting people on there before.
Yeah, no, I haven't watched him in a while. It's been a minute since I watched him, at least a few months, but because he just hasn't had any guests that I've like really been interested in. But he'll just all of a sudden one day pop up with something like he's actually even done a couple like outtakes too of like when on some of those more controversial episodes on Rogan where he actually went
Yeah.
on there and had like discussed like here's what happened and he kind of analyzed the video and some of the stuff.
Yeah.
And I liked his takes because they were pretty much based. He thought like, hey,
Yeah.
here we are they're trying to discuss a topic and then you're proving the dude's trying to basically say, hey, I've done my research, all this stuff, and you're coming in because you're like, no, that's wrong. I've done the research and there's plenty of evidence, but you're so closed-minded and you're basically feeding into what they're saying is that you're a
Right.
gatekeeper and closed-minded. He's all, give him a chance, like, why
Yeah.
can't you open your mind to that? You're not answering his question, like how much
Right.
percent of the ocean floor have you actually covered? Like he asked you a question, he's answering
Mhm.
all your questions, so
Mhm.
why don't you answer his? So I thought it was cool because it was like he was basically taking the side of like, hey, look, if you're gonna have these debates, you got both parties have to be open
Yeah.
minded.
Has to be fair.
Be like, well, I came here to prove you wrong, and that's it.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yep. And
Yeah.
Those are the worst kind too.
It's not a debate.
Yep.
Well, look, fellas, I think we were tapped out on this one.
It was a good one.
Yeah,
Oh,
no,
yeah.
I
Really good one.
enjoyed this conversation a lot. I'm thinking next week. How about we you willing to tackle the uh,
Antarctica.
Bro,
I
let's do it. Yes.
no,
do
for
it.
me it's either Antarctica or Giants. It's
Well,
between
Giants, I definitely want to do because when you guys brought up the Giants thing and stuff. I watched some videos. I went back and started watching some of the docs on that, and it's crazy. Like the stuff I'm seeing now, I'm like, dude, why now are people hiding and governments all
Right.
hiding this shit? Like,
Right.
what is there to hide? And then especially when you find out about there was giants in Native America and like before.
Egypt.
Yeah,
It's another
all
one
over
of
the
those
world.
things that it's
It's not just one
stories
place.
everywhere, all over
Yeah,
the world.
yeah,
Like,
yeah.
But remember, the Anunnaki, the gods were.
That's what I'm
Yep.
saying. That's what I'm saying. So
I was just gonna say that. It's gonna tie back into the Anunnaki now.
all the time, just like I said, those Lemurians, 7 feet tall.
Yeah.
well, we're kind of on a trail of like hitting the topics that are connecting to Anunnaki. I'm thinking maybe next week, guys, let's do Giants. Just
Okay.
so we can keep it going.
Let's do
Yep.
it.
But
Talk
hey, listen, fellas, I appreciate you guys jumping
Yeah.
on.
Always, man.
You guys have been a great asset to the conversations.
Man, this is
'cause
great.
Always.
I fucking love talking about this stuff. So
Thanks for having us, man.
Yeah,
of
for sure.
course,
Thank
of course. Fucking Pilgrim, fuck you.
you.
I'm always down, bro. I'm
yeah.
always down.
Yeah.
Always.
Yeah. Oh, that's what he meant. I thought he meant finally we're ending. Yeah. You've been teasing Giants for a long time.
We'll bring
yeah.
the
All right.
Giants next week.
I think we are because there's some good stories out there. I've seen stuff like obviously through Egypt. the Anunnaki, and then also in the Mediterranean, like in Afghanistan, like giants. But listen, guys, thank you. We'll I'm sure touch base on this next topic throughout the week.
Hell yeah.
Thank you everyone that stuck around, and thank you everyone that's gonna watch on the replay. Appreciate you guys.
All
Later,
right.
night.
guys.
Later, guys.